Welcome to another conversation on www.speakupafrica.net. Today we're discussing the future of East Africa higher education. We're trying to analyze should East African governments continuously fund higher education platforms. So today we're also hosting two very wonderful individuals. Dr. Sabina from Kenya, who is a lecturer and has been an educator for over 20 years. So she has experience in basic education and also in higher education. We're going to allow our guests to say something. We're going to start with you, Dr. Sabina. Please give us a quick introduction of yourself. Tell us a little about yourself. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Sabina Mutemi. I come from Kenya, and I am a lecturer in the Kenyan universities, several of them, because I do part-time in many of them. And I have been in the sector of education for almost 30 years, not just 20, but almost 30 years. So I'm glad to be here.
And then now we're going to have Elizabeth, who is a student from, she's going to be a representative of Ugandan students. When students should fund their higher education came up, students of Kenya went out on strike. So we want to hear the views of the Ugandan students, and we want to see, do they think the same as the Kenyan students? All right, so Elizabeth, introduce yourself, please.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Nabasiria Elizabeth, and I'm a student at Chambogo University in Uganda, Kampala district. So I'm privileged to be a part of this talk show. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone that has participated in the introduction. Now, let us look at a brief breakdown of why we are having this conversation today. So we're going to start by pointing out that the unemployment rate in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania has significantly increased in the last 3 years. And experts foretell an upsurge in these numbers as the years come to a close. So it is to be noted that the majority of unemployed members of the society are the youth, and we make up more than 45% of the population in East Africa. The question that I'm going to be asking today is, since the rate of unemployment has increased significantly over the years and is due to increase even more, is it imperative for the government to actually pull out funding from higher education, since the agenda or the intended outcome of higher education has not been achieved and continues to be a greater challenge even as we go on? And I want to start by posing this question to Elizabeth. I want us to give us your views. Just tell us, do you think that the government of Uganda should pull out funding and allow the higher institutions to fully be self-sufficient? Give us your views, Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you for that question. My view is the government should still fund universities, and some of my reasons are the government should be like for as we are going to, like, when people know that we are moving into a digital world where we are no longer having low levels of illiteracy in East Africa. Now, if their funds are removed from government institutions, for example, students who are funded by the government, that means there is going to be a lot of illiteracy, and literally most of the parents that have educated their students up to senior secondary school will have missed out for those ones who don't have money to fund their children at higher institutions of learning. How much their levels of unemployment, I feel they should just invest in new opportunities, in like introducing life skills, handmade skills in universities, not only doing courses that are not practical. This helps students to, even if when they move out of university, they can be able to create their own jobs, but still funded by the government, than completely not funding the government, because most of the students will be left out, and this will lead to a lot of high crime rates, because most of the students will not have what to do. Hence, some of them will resort to high crime rates in the in the countries in East Africa. So yes, that is my view. Like, the government should still fund the, the universities, public institutions of learning. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. According to Elizabeth's view, she says that the government should continue to fund the students in higher levels of education. And she also insists that it is imperative for the government to recognize that the education is still the key to success in East Africa and in Africa in general. Thank you for that breakdown, Elizabeth. Now we're going to take the conversation to the lecturer and the educator with over 30 years of experience. Let her tell us what she thinks. Should the government continuously fund higher institutions of learning? Dr. Sabina, the conversation is to you.
Okay, thank you. I beg to agree and disagree with Elizabeth. First of all, I would suggest that the government stops funding the higher education, but should not push that burden to the parents. I believe that if the funding is stopped gradually in a graduated way, then the university can actually stand on its feet. Let me give you my reasons before you raise weapons and you come up, you raise arms against me as students, of course. But I'm saying, of what benefit is this education if the people offering it, that is the universities, cannot lead by example? Elizabeth said that the students should be trained and educated in a manner that they can be able to create jobs. Who is this that is training them? Who is this that is giving them skills? It's the university itself. So can't it lead by example? Can't it also show by example? Like, for example, if the backbone of a university, like in Kenya, the Egerton University, its backbone, it actually offers agriculture. It imparts knowledge and skills so that people can go out there and actually benefit from agriculture, make it commercial, offer jobs and the like. What is this university doing with its first piece of land that just lays idle there? It's not getting it, it's not generating income. So suppose they started that as a way of generating income, then the students would not only get the theoretical aspect of education, they would also learn practically and see that it is true what they are learning, they can put it into practice, and it can be of help to them. Many other universities, like Kenyatta University, has this, what do you call it, an incubation place where businesses, and if they can incubate other businesses, then they can change and make it a way to earn money, like being Shark Tanks, where when they incubate, they just don't help the person to start off the business, but they become part of it, where they earn some percentage and the like. This does not happen overnight. So my take is it possible for government to propose that in some specific number of years, they want the universities to be able to stand on their feet, and then they start gradually reducing the amount of money. And the condition is that the university generates its own money and does not push that burden to the parents or to the students. That is my take.
Well, that was a wonderful breakdown, Dr. Sabina. I'm looking at what you were trying to say, and I am thinking you somehow collided with what Elizabeth said. Elizabeth was very strong in mentioning that it is imperative for the government to recognize the importance of education to East African youths, the 45% who make up the majority of the population. On the other hand, Dr. Sabina says that while I agree it is imperative for us to recognize what education can and has done for East Africa and Africa in general, it is also imperative for us to recognize the importance of self-sufficiency in these institutions. So she also put forward that it is about the government structuring how they want to actually roll out how these institutions of higher learning will eventually become self-sufficient. Which is a really, really nice outlook when you look at it like that. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Sabina. So I want us to go to a different outlook. I want us to look at a different outlook. Let us look at the economy of East Africa. With a total of student population of almost 110,000, Uganda is home to about 32 universities that together produce more than 30,000 graduates each year. At the same time, we have Kenya producing over 495,000 graduates in an year. We have Tanzania that gets also to almost 60,000 in an year. And let us also notice that the World Bank in 2012 revealed that Africa is the only region in the world where the amount of current public expenditures per student has increased by 30% over the past 2 decades. So in the last 20 years, the student amount that they're spending per student has increased by the last 30 years. So we have increased numbers of amounts that we spend per student. Then we also have increased numbers of graduates in all 3 countries. But at the same time, our economies have not seen significant change. Can we use that as a reason for us to confidently say that the government should pull out funding or reduce the amount of emphasis on higher education because it is not translating to our economy? When you look at the economy of Uganda, when you look at the economy of Kenya, when you look at the economy of Tanzania, our economies are still shaky as compared to the world economy. While there has been significant growth, it is also important for us to note that we could do so much better. So what can we say in this note? Should we reduce, even though we are not going to completely pull out, should we reduce when it comes to the relationship between the number of graduates, the economy, and the amount of money that is spent per student? Elizabeth, you joined the stream. I want you to answer that question for us. I want you to tell us, do you think, because our economies have not grown, our economies are still very shaky, do you think that the government should at least reduce the amount of money they spend on students?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think it's okay for the government to start reducing on the funds they are putting in public institutions. Now, for the sake of Uganda, because there has been a rise of many public universities, sorry about that, I'm of the view that the government is okay to reduce on the amount of money they are investing in public universities, but not completely withdrawing all the funds. For the case of Uganda, most of the secondary schools receive forms that which students, senior students sign in order to apply for government scholarships. But when you look at most of the secondary schools that get these forms, they are schools of highly middle incomes people in Uganda. Most of the parents that educate their students from these universities can be able to afford to pay for their students in universities. So my take on it is this: as the government is trying to reduce on the amount of money that they put in public universities, they should put also into consideration the students who are taking advantage of these scholarships. For instance, there are many students that educated by their parents from villages, from the outskirts of East Africa, like in the slums. So if the government can get to find out those students that cannot be able to pay tuition at university and only fund those students, it would be better than getting these scholarships to be funded by only to be received by only high class students, literally, if I may say. Yes, it's okay, they can reduce, but regulate the money to go to only those people that are in need of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that breakdown, Elizabeth. I want to bring Dr. Sabina back to the stream, and I want us to look at it from a statistical point of view. Let us put forward what the World Bank suggested in 1996. They recommended the shifting of resources to basic education and the reliance on private funding for higher education. So they wanted higher education platforms to implement an output-based financing system and to encourage donors and the government and anyone that was willing to fund education in Africa to target primary and secondary education. In addition, there was also a research that said that investing in lower levels of education yields greater social benefits than the rewards that come from investing in higher levels of education. You have been an educator for 30 years plus, and so I want you to tell us from your experience using basic education and higher levels of education, do you think it is important for us to actually emphasize on pouring these funds to basic education as compared to emphasizing on higher levels of education?
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that because at the higher levels of education, having gone through it, I know that people can think, if they are given that as a challenge, the universities can be able to stand on their feet. There is researches that are done there for academic purposes can be made such that they have some form of commercial or money generating aspect, so that now for any research that you do, you should have in mind that it must have something to do with either improving or increasing the opportunities for jobs for the young people, or should have some form of money generating aspect or angle for the higher levels or that kind of institution. On the other hand, the basic education, these lower levels, the elementary form of education, these young people have not been empowered academically, so they may not really be expected to come up with different ways and researches to actually come up with commercial aspects of education. They are just being offered the basic education. So I believe that the government should support every single parent, every single child, so that they acquire the elementary form of education. But on the other hand, I don't want you people to misunderstand me. When I say that the universities should not be funded, I am not saying that this burden should be pushed to the parents and the children, because by the fact that your child has gone beyond in Kenya, like Form 4, does not make you a millionaire to afford if you are not affording the high school. What I am saying is, the university itself should come up with money generating projects so that they take over the government supplies or whatever the government was injecting into that institution. And that now reduces the burden from the government and at the same time does not increase the burden of educating this child on the parent. It doesn't increase the burden of the paying of fees and the like on the parent or the child. So I believe that if that is done, then we will be able to have more money to support the elementary or the basic education because the government will no longer have to share the money between the elementary and the higher education.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sabina, for that breakthrough. You mentioned something that I would like us to take note that the institutions of higher learning can actually come up with different ways in which they can actually give this money back to they can actually get this money, they can actually generate these funds. And it is imperative to note that institutions of higher learning have been more dependent on the amount of money that comes from donors, the government, and individual students that attend these schools. So I want us to take note that there is a higher education policy of 1999 in Tanzania that advocated for the enrollment, growth, institutionalization, and cost sharing and increased sector funding of individual institutions. So what are some of the things that universities can do to ensure that they get that money and take this as a way to advise the universities of Uganda, the universities of Tanzania, and those ones of Kenya on what they can do to actually get the funds so that they can stop completely relying on government funding, and so that this money can be relocated to other issues like the drought and famine that we are facing in our countries, or climate change, or even the economic growth. What can they do? Allow me to start with Elizabeth, even as we wind up. What do you think the colleges and universities of these countries can do to increase the funding that to increase the amount of money that they get it, so that they can stop relying on the government? Elizabeth?
Yes. I think the public universities should get more investment. They should engage the students, because we are dealing with students that are 18 years and above, and we are looking at them going into the world to work. If the universities could work hand in hand with the guild of the universities to create more, like, they would get more employment by encouraging students to start up some new innovation, thereby having that money come back to they would get a percentage. It would be like a cooperation between the government, the students, and the universities, and the universities would get some of that money to put it back into the university. Then also, I feel like the universities should reduce on the number of courses. Some universities have courses that are likely to be similar. For example, in the business course, most of the business courses, when you look at them, most of them look to be similar. They would try to reduce on these courses, hence reducing on the costs that they incur as universities concerning, like, employment of lecturers, because you get to find that they employ more lecturers, but the lecturers they employ, most of them are lecturing courses that are similar. Yes, there could be a reduction on the courses, hence saving the money for other projects of the university. So that's some of the reasons that I can give that can help the universities to keep up that money. Yes, and also growing.
Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that detailed one. She has said investment. She has said investment. She's also said that some of the courses are very similar, and some of the lecturers that are employed to teach these courses teach the same thing. So we should actually take note of that and look into that deeply. And at the discussion on the kind of courses that are offered in our universities is a whole other conversation for a whole other day. I think we should put forward that different courses have different agendas and mandates, and that our courses should be structured to suit the needs of society today. We should be trained to fill the gaps of society today. Now, back to you, Dr. Sabina. I want you to answer the same question that Elizabeth answered. What do you think that universities can do so they can generate their own income, so they do not have to rely on government funding, and this money can be relocated to other issues of the society? Dr. Sabina, we can't hear you. Your microphone is on mute.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
I'm saying thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. I think first and foremost, I believe that every university is able differently from another university. What I mean is, there is what they have, some resources that may not be found in another institution of higher learning. So, for example, if I were to compare JKUAT and Egerton, I had given an example earlier about Egerton University, and I said they have a vast piece of land. They also have, their backbone, or whatever they call themselves, they are good at, is agriculture. The JKUAT Machas, it is a university also that offers agriculture. They have a lot of advanced technology. If you recall recently, during the Uhuruto time, that is the former president, the Jubilee reign, this university was actually putting into place the tablets that were being taken to the primary schools. Now, that means they are strong in that area. They can take advantage of that to generate money. Another university may be so good in business-oriented courses. Like I give an example of KU, where there is the Chadaria incubation. So where they incubate the young people who are starting business and the like. So this kind of incubation can be taken to a higher level, where when you incubate, you don't just incubate to start the person off, but you listen, and if the idea is good, you partner. So it becomes, you are part of it, and some percentage comes to you as an institution. Also, and several universities, you could take what they are good at, and they can actually choose what to do, because we are talking about people who are, every institution has autonomy, so they know what would work for them, and maybe what works for one institution may not work for another one. Another thing is the academic angle. When we come to masters and PhDs, we offer, or the university require, that a student should be able to do a research. In some institutions outside Africa, some people, or the students, when they are doing masters, they don't necessarily work alone, but they are absorbed in a project, and a project like money generating project, where they learn and study some aspect, one of the aspects. And that means that even as they do research, they will be adding value economically to this institution. And if it is demanded of that in the institutions of learning, the people there are well versed with this kind of project, and they will embrace them and let them see the light of the day. We just need to have a policy, and the rest should be left to these people, because these are people who are knowledgeable. It is just the policy and direction, and the support that they may need to put in place this. Thank you.
Okay. So that has been a wonderful breakdown by Dr. Sabina and Elizabeth, a student from Kiambogo University in Uganda. Now, let's just break down. We have answered the question of, do you think universities should pull out funding or reduce the amount of funding? Do you think governments should reduce the amount of funding to institutions of higher education in Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya? Basically because the intended outcome, which is employment, has reduced significantly over the years and continues to reduce as we go by. And we have gotten the answer of, yes, it is possible for these universities to actually, for these governments to actually reduce the amount of funding, and it is possible for these universities to become self-sufficient, to be able to generate their own funds and to stop relying on governments. I think that should be the call of action, that institutions of higher learning should find a way to actually bring the money to their pockets without relying on government funding, and that government funding should be structured in a way that it favors basic education over higher levels of education. It is imperative to note that we are not saying that that is what they should do immediately, but we are saying that it is something that they can think about, and they can structure their policies and the implementation process to ensure that they get to that time when our institutions of higher learning will be fully self-sufficient. I want you to take a minute to involve yourself in our discussion. Go to www.speakup.net go to www.speakupafrica.net and take part in the conversation tagged the future of East Africa's higher education. There you will be able to take up a poll, and you will have information on everything we have talked about today, the statistical representation of today's conversation, and you will have an opportunity to actually air out your views and to answer the question of, based on the statistics that were put forward in that report that you have read, should the individual East African countries continue to set the same amount of funds for higher education institutions? One more time, thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you so much, Dr. Sabina. I think let's take one parting shot from both of you. Tell us, as we wind up, what is the one thing that you'd want the people listening to us back at home to take from this conversation? Let us start with Dr. Sabina, to respect hierarchies, and then Elizabeth will close it for us.
My is that it is possible for the higher institutions of learning to stand on their feet and to be able to fund every project that they have there. But this one has to be done gradually in a graduated manner, and it should not go to the parents or students. Thank you.
Okay, that is wonderful, because I feel like the biggest fear for Elizabeth was also that the parents will have to carry the weight of paying the school fees, and it will have to trickle down. Elizabeth, what is your parting shot for today's discussion?
Yes, my parting shots would be, like, as much as we want to reduce on the funding, my call would be upon to the government of East Africa to, as they want to reduce the funds, they should also look out to divide these funds in universities very well, because it does not make sense for people who are well off to get these scholarships, yet there are people that don't have money that can use it. So as much as they want to still fund or to reduce on the money, they should look out for that money. They should where it is going, literally. Otherwise, even parents should do their job to educate their children until they complete the higher levels of learning. Thank you so much, Wangechi, for hosting us. We are humbled. Thank you.
Okay, and that will be with those few remarks will culminate our conversation for the day. Elizabeth has said something very important. She has said when the government decides to pull out the funding, they should be considerate so that if you're already disadvantaged by being poor, you should not have to be disadvantaged by being not able to go to school. They should ensure equal distribution of these funds. And also she put out something very important. She said, if the money is not going to go to these institutions, where is it going to go? Accountability and transparency to the governments of Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda is what we have been calling out for all through. My name is Wangeshi Karemi, and this is Speak Up Africa. This was the conversation on the future of higher education in East Africa. Take a moment to go to www.speakupafrica.net. Take part in the poll on the future of higher education in East Africa. Tell us your thoughts. We would like to know what you're saying, because our aim is to inform, to engage, and to empower. I will see you next time.